What is going on, you beautiful bastards? Welcome back to the channel. This is Unnecessary Rambling. I'm Brandon Sylvia. Thank you all for joining me here today to talk about some games of December, diving into what I think is interesting coming out in the month of December, and not a bad month to close off the year. So some okay stuff here to dive into, to look forward to. So we'll be splitting everything up with the games I'm interested in and the games that are still notable releasing this month that are just maybe not so much for me. So without further ado, let us begin. Let us jump into this thing. Once again, thank you all for stopping by. If you're new here, consider subscribing, sticking around, giving me a follow on Twitter. Everything will be linked in the description. So yeah, appreciate you for joining me. And in the comments, let me know what games releasing in December you are personally excited for, especially if there's anything that you're looking forward to that I don't cover here today with this list. So without further ado, let's jump into the first game release. Well, actually, a few of these are releasing on the same day to kick off November in a really big way. And December 2nd, we're getting Marvel Midnight Suns. And this is the Firaxis game, the Marvel kind of XCOM game. And I got to be honest, reviews right now, or previews right now, I should say, are not looking so hot for Marvel's Midnight Suns. I'm debating grabbing it because there's certain things, like I'm hearing in the reviews a lot of people complaining about the fact that there's so much emphasis on the story and the decisions you're making. Although I'm hearing in the previews also that, you know, people are upset, not necessarily so much that the story is so prominent, but how under-delivered the lines are and how just stiff the characters are. And I have looked at the game and looked at the cinematics. I'm like, yeah, you know, that doesn't really look impressive, but I've saw a little bit of choice making, a little bit of bonds that you're forming, and you know, some decisions that possibly have a ripple effect in the game. And you guys know, if you've been following me for a while, I am an absolute sucker for that shit. The card systems and the strategic battle and all that, the turn-based systems, the tactics. Like I'm not crazy over that. That's not my style of gameplay. So I was really relying on this story to hit me and make me want to jump into this universe. And from what I'm hearing right now, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to need to see how reviews turn out for this game to hear what people are saying, if the story is deeper than just that surface level. Oh, pick this or pick that. I want to hear, does it actually materialize in any interesting payoff or any interesting conclusion? So I am curious about that. But, you know, creating your own character, and I like the darker tone. I like the characters that they're focusing on here for Midnight Suns, just a darker overall vibe. And I'm into that. So I'm curious to see what they do with that in the story. But we shall see. And that's, you know, like I said, December 2nd, that's a $70 game. And you look at Midnight Suns, and you know, I'm not trying to pass judgment on the final product because I have no idea. Obviously, you know, we haven't got our hands on it yet, but you look, or at least when I look at that game and I see $70, I'm like, oh shit, that is that's a tall order for that game. But, you know, hey, we won't judge it until we actually know what we're going to get. And also on December 2nd, and also, in my opinion, a tall order. It's a lot to ask out of people. $70 for Need for Speed Unbound, the new Need for Speed game. And I guess, you know, there's going to have to come a certain point where we just stop talking about price in general, because the big publishers, the big AAA publishers, it seems that $70 is just going to be standard across the board. So it's not really going to be a reflection of quality, just like the $60 game wasn't a reflection of quality at all. Anything under the big AAA publisher umbrella usually was going to cost you $60, and now that's just usually going to cost you $70, regardless of the style of game or the quality of game or whatever. But let's jump off price for a second. To me, this is coming down to what reviews better in December. I'm going to probably pick up one of these two, either Midnight Suns or Need for Speed Unbound. If somehow Need for Speed Unbound just comes out and it's glowing across the board, people are like, this is the reinvention that we've all been waiting for Need for Speed. I like the art direction and the art style that they're going for here, with kind of like the pop effects, and it almost has a cell shaded tone at certain times, and then it gets back into the realistic driving. And there's things about Need for Speed Unbound that, if they are expanded upon or if they're focused on in a real meaningful way, that I could see this being a pretty big hit, like a pretty big surprise hit. And I don't know, I'm just excited to see more, see how this ends up turning out. So I do think for me, December, it's gonna come down either to Midnight Suns or Need for Speed Unbound on December 2nd. I will be grabbing one of those two games, but I think it's going to have to be like one or the other. I'm not going to, drop $140 on both of them, unless they're just, people are saying, okay, both these games are absolute fucking 10 out of 10s. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I'm seriously doubting that both of them will end up turning out that way. But I'll check one of them out, but I'm not 100% sold on which out of Need for Speed or Midnight Suns that I'll be buying. One of them I will be buying, playing, checking out, reviewing here on the channel for you, but I'm not 100% sure which of those two. A game that is also releasing on December 2nd that I am 100% sure about, that I will be buying day one, $70 game as well, but I am happy to spend my $70 on Callisto Protocol. This is one of the most important, for me, releases in a long, long time. I think that, and I'm not trying to throw too much weight on the responsibility of this release, but you look at the last decade plus of survival horror, you could even say 15 years, and has there been a single AAA survival horror franchise created in 15 years? Like a new one? I look at this game in the same way I look at Resident Evil 7. Like, the release of Resident Evil 7 was so important, and it had a monumental shift in how survival horror was perceived to the masses and the viability of that genre going forward. Resident Evil 7, it shaped everything that we're getting. And you can, Resident Evil 2 definitely didn't hurt either, but it started with Resident Evil 7. And then that kind of shook up the industry to make people aware of, oh shit, this genre is kind of climbing out of its niche sort of obscurity that it fell by the wayside to, I would say, late 7th gen era on into the early 8th gen era. I think Resident Evil 7 was that moment where it crawled up out of its grave and said, hey, survival horror, it's back in a big way. But we still, Resident Evil is the only kind of titan, AAA titan in the survival horror game space. And if Callisto can come out December 2nd swinging, just swinging early prime Mike Tyson, going for knockouts, round one knockouts. That's what we need here. We need Callisto to be that game, that first game in 15 years. Maybe not 15 years. First game in over a decade in the survival horror space that creates a new titan, a new franchise that we can rely on in a similar way that we rely on Resident Evil. Maybe not with the same cadence of release or frequency, because we're talking about, Capcom versus Striking Distance, and obviously there's a scalability there that I believe Striking Distance is a team of like 100 or so developers, whereas with Capcom, they got multiple teams only focusing on Resident Evil each year. So, we're not talking about the same exact scale, but having a franchise in place that we can rely on in the survival horror game space, it's so important to pushing the genre forward and reviving and breathing new life into survival horror overall. So I'm not trying to overstate or put too much weight on this one game, but I think this could be a titan. And honestly, if you think about it, maybe the last franchise, survival horror franchise that was created on the AAA space outside of Resident Evil was Dead Space, maybe. Or did Fear come out after Dead Space? Regardless, Dead Space was one of the last real AAA survival horror franchises created. But regardless, you guys get what I'm saying. The potential here for Callisto Protocol is huge. It's my most anticipated game, obviously, for the rest of the year. I think that out of any game that's come out this year, this is probably my most anticipated game overall. Cannot wait to see this thing, what it's going to actually feel like getting hands-on with that game. There's been some story trailers that have come out lately. I haven't watched any of it. I'm trying to go blackout on everything with that game. I just want to jump in, immerse myself in it, sink into that for whatever. I think they said it's going to be like a 12-hour game. I just want to just live in that world for 12 hours. I cannot wait for the Callisto Protocol on December 2nd. All right, and then we have a little bit of a break here for me, and the next game I'm looking forward to in December is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, dropping on December 13th. And I loved Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm actually curious if, I would guess with the way they're releasing this before the Part 2 of FF7 Remake, I'm guessing this won't spoil FF7 2 or Part 2, the remake, too badly. So I guess it's okay to jump in. I've never played the original Final Fantasy VII. I've never played any of the Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy VII Remake was my first time ever diving in, and I dove in because like the combat just looked really cool and was action-packed and just looked bombastic and fun. So I was like, hey, I'll try this shit out. And I always thought that all the Final Fantasy VII games, you had to play one to play the next, to play the next, to play the next. I didn't know they were their own standalone stories. So like that makes them a whole hell of a lot less intimidating from an outsider's perspective. But yeah, I believe this Crisis Core is kind of continuing that same battle system, those strategic action combat battles. And that alone is enough for me because I just loved the battle system in Final Fantasy VII Remake so much. But I'm curious, I want to know more about Zack and the different characters. There's just a lot of story in Final Fantasy VII Remake that was much more compelling than I ever expected it to be. So yeah, I'm definitely curious to get more lore and backstory on the universe and the characters in that world. So December 13th, Crisis Core Reunion, I will be checking it out for sure. And also on December 13th, we have a Game Pass Day 1 drop, High on Life. And man, I saw this game initially at the Xbox Bethesda showcase, and I was like, dude, this looks so fucking cool. It has the, Journey to the Savage Planet sort of vibes, Outer World vibes of just the world and the colors that they're using, and the talking knives and your weapons talking to you as you're using them, and this anthropomorphic sort of just, it's crazy. It's totally insane. But the one moment that sold me on this game and the humor, because of course you're watching this and you're like, man, I could see this getting really old really, really quickly. But there was one moment that sold me on the writing of this game. And this one moment is not necessarily indicative of the overall quality of writing. It could just be one stellar moment, but I just feel like someone that thought this joke up has to have some other real funny shit in this game. But it was on Game Informer. I believe this is an exclusive interview that they did, and I'll link to it in the description. You know what? Scratch that. I'm just going to clip in the exact moment that I'm talking about right here because I'm not going to be able to do justice to the delivery and the tone of the joke. So I'm just going to put the specific joke right here. I'll clip it in and let you guys watch it.
So what exactly are you doing out here?
What? I'm fishing.
You can tell I'm fishing, right?
Oh, right, duh, of course, sorry. It's very obvious, yes. So, have you caught anything?
No, never have, never will. No fish can live down here in this sludge.
If there aren't any fish in there, why are you fishing? What is that? What's going on?
Because I'm still working up the courage to drown myself.
Yikes, wow, okay.
Dude, that shit is so goddamn clever and funny to me. And if we get stuff on that level, I'm good. That is my type of humor. Full stop. Morbid, fucked up. That's my style of humor. Very self-deprecating, very dark. Like I'm there for all that shit. So if it's more of that and less of the kind of dick joke, shit joke, fart joke, if it's more on that side, or, it can be a combination of the two. It can't be overly morbid and every moment it's a suicide joke one after another. Like, I get that. But if there is enough flashes of that style of humor as well, I am there. The one thing on High on Life that I'm not sold on is the gameplay. We saw that boss battle, and that looked like some of the most bland, generic, boring shit that I've seen in a boss battle in quite some time. We'll see how it ends up playing out. Everything, when you have your hands on with the game, when you're controlling the movement, everything that you see, from an outsider's perspective, from a bystander's perspective, that can be a lot different when you actually have your hands on and you're controlling the character and the movement, and you can feel the fluidity if it's a little janky or if it is moving, just moving exactly how you want it to move. Because the simplest tasks, like I think of, web swinging with Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man, and you just see that if you're watching it, you're like, okay, cool. I've seen this 100 times with every Spider-Man movie and every single TV show and cartoon. But when you actually have your hands on and you're the one doing the swinging, it's so satisfying. So like little moments where in that boss battle where your character's like zipping around and he has that little zip line thing, like I wonder if that's just going to feel so good when you actually have control of the character and you're the one pulling off those little motions. So it's going to depend on how it feels. And that's the thing with Game Pass. There's there's really no barrier to entry. If you have Game Pass, the thing is dropping there day one, December 13th. All you have to have is the damn service to hop in and play it. So I don't know. I can't say if I would jump out day one and buy this thing, but I'll absolutely be checking it out on December 13th. And on December 15th, we have a little game that this actually looks pretty compelling to me. It's a game called Blacktail, and it's coming to us from Focus Home, which is a publisher I'm really starting to trust a lot more in that vein of your Annapurnas or Devolver Digitals, or they just seem like they kind of have a knack for being able to tell when a smaller project has promise, has potential, and they seem to help really foster that potential and promise and bring something special out. So I'm very curious about this. The setup, it's like a first person bow and arrow shooter that's focusing a lot on, a choice-based narrative where you're shaping the story based off the decisions you make. And it's a lot of like Slavic folklore, supernatural sort of witchy themes and shit. And a lot of like kind of straight up, are you going to be good or are you going to be evil? And I believe your character can be impacted based off of your choices. So I'm kind of down for this. I think the vibe of this world is very mysterious and interesting. It's a looker for a small scale game. And then there's like, your crafting systems and your upgrading systems, just as you would get with any old RPG. But you're out there fishing and shit. In the latest gameplay trailer I saw, you're out there just casting a line, doing some damn fishing. I love fishing in games. I don't like fishing games, but I like fishing in other games that have other things going on. Like Red Dead Redemption 2, spent so much time fucking fishing. Arthur Morgan out there just fishing all day, just fucking fishing. And so I guess I'm going to dive into Blacktail and do some fishing in this witchy, spooky, mysterious, Slavic, folklore-inspired world. I don't really know much. Let me see how much this thing's going to cost. Oh, man. Yeah, this thing's going to be $16. It's digital only, I believe, but $16. Dropping on December 15th. Sure, does it possibly look a little bit janky, a little bit stuttery at times? Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I could see this combat system being a little bit janky, but for $16, the interesting premise alone of this game, I'm going to check this thing out. Blacktail, December 15th. You got my money. I'm going to check you out. All right, and now how about some not for me but notable releases dropping in December? We have Hello Neighbors 2 dropping on December 6th. The game that was not beloved by most critics, and I don't even think most gamers really got into this thing, but it developed quite the audience, and it seemed that it did pretty well. It got a sequel. It got a bunch of weird, merch and toys and shit based around the name. So shout out to Hello Neighbors. Go ahead and get your bag. All right, and next up, we have Choo Choo Charles dropping on December 9th. And this is one I'm going to keep my eye on. This is that damn train horror game where you're running from the train and then you battle the train later on in the game as you level up and shit. A ridiculous concept, but I'm going to keep my eye on this. If there's actually something there other than just the novelty of that idea, which the novelty alone, I will say, is compelling enough for me to have my eye on it. But if there's something else there that's driving you to make the game fun to actually engage with on a moment-to-moment basis, then you know what? I'm going to keep my eye on this. If reviews come out and they're like, hey, this is actually not only a novel concept, but an interesting game to play, I'll check out some old Choo Choo Charles. And on December 9th, also, we have Dragon Quest Treasures. I'm not a Dragon Quest guy, but I know that there are many of you out there. We have Wavetale dropping on December 12th, and this is like a journey, pathless, serene, sort of low-key, chill vibes, and it's beautiful, man. Smaller scale title. These games, at certain moods, I can really get in to these style of games, and maybe, December, you're in your festive spirit, maybe that would be a good one to slip in there, especially if it's like a 2-3 hour game, just a nice chill night. I could see that really hitting the spot for your festive vibes if you're looking to wind down a little bit one night. So maybe that is something I'll look into. And last but certainly not least, we have Valkyrie Profile Lilith. And this is the remake to the PlayStation 1 game, I believe, right? Okay, so yeah, Valkyrie Profile Lilith is the port of the PSP remaster of the original Valkyrie Profile game that was released on the PlayStation 1. So probably need to do a little bit more research before making these damn videos, but hey, here we are. Shout out to Valkyrie Profile Lilith. Valkyrie, what was it, Elysium this year? Played it, thought it was decent. Don't really have much love for the franchise, but hey, those are the games of December that have caught my attention, and some big releases here. We have some Midnight Suns, we have some Need for Speed, some Callisto, some Crisis Core, Dragon Quest, Valkyrie Profile. We have some pretty big titles to close out the year. So excited for 2023, man. So damn excited for 2023. So many good games. Your Jedi Survivors, your RE4s, your Starfields, your fucking Hogwarts Legacy, just a lot of really good shit. So I'm so pumped to jump into 2023, consume some good games, and also have some solid content planned out for the rest of 2022 that I'm excited to get to you guys. Some little awards. I'm trying to think of the best way to do a solo award show and speak a little bit more in depth, but not, make a 5-hour thing where I'm just talking about my damn self. I'm thinking of doing 10 categories or so and just doing a top 5 sort of rapid fire, top 5 open worlds of the year, top 5 horror games of the year, things that are specific to me. Like, you know, I love diving into open worlds, love diving into horror games, and then just sort of rattling off, and maybe not having 5 nominees for each one. You know, that way, if there is, like, honestly, open world, I don't know if there's been 5 open world games that I've played and enjoyed this year enough to, like, you know, give them love. Like, I can think of 3 off the top of my head that I really enjoyed and would like to show some love to. So maybe a top 3 open world, maybe, you know, have nominees, have award categories, and just how many ever nominees fit in it that I want to give love to, show love to, then highlighting it that way. I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there, but really pumped to do that. Pumped to do all the end of the year shit. You know, I'm going to go through and shout out some hidden gems of 2022, do my top 10 games of 2022. Pumped for all of that. I have another thing in the works that I'm excited to potentially debut on the channel soon. We'll see how it ends up, you know, working out. I'm hopeful on it, and it's kind of revolving around an idea like we're doing right here with the December game, the monthly games thing. So it's sort of a spin-off of that into a different thing. So I'm hopeful that that ends up coming to fruition. I also am going to be chatting with Retro Rivals, and that'll probably be uploaded mid-December or so. They're going to come on and shoot the breeze about some games and other good stuff. So really pumped for all and I love obviously getting content out there to you guys and talking to you guys, shooting the shit with you in the comments, but I love end of the year content in general, just like watching other people's shit, you know, watching the Min-Max awards and the 210s and the Easy Allies award. Like I love consuming end of the year content, just having that recap of people just talking about all the stuff that they loved in gaming for the year. I always really appreciate the end of the year look back at everything that was. And so, yeah, pumped as hell for all that stuff, and pumped for 2023. Hopefully looking like a real great year for gaming. So I am stoked for another great year. Appreciate you all for tuning in. And as always, drop in the comments, shoot the breeze with me. And yeah, man, I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.